What caused you to write a letter to the parents of the kids who are bullying your son, Thomas?
Middle school's tough for everyone. It's really tough, but it was especially tough on my son, Thomas. 7th grade was a nightmare. I couldn't get him to go to school. I couldn't get him to stay at school. Sorry. We just couldn't figure out what was happening. His friends dropped him. He was choked on the playground, like at lunchtime, by a random 6th grader, so a younger student. He was made fun of constantly. He didn't have anyone to eat lunch with. He was beat up in the bathroom. And on social media, I was noticing that it was the end of the year, and so all these wonderful parents were making these awesome posts about how wonderful their child's last year at school was, right? And Johnny did this, and Sarah did that, and I love it. I love to see all that. But that isn't the case for everyone's school year, right? And it was especially not the case for Thomas. Mm-hmm. So even though this is my private social media account, it was kind of cathartic for me to just throw it out there and let our friends and family know that here's the real truth of what happened to our son in 7th grade. And it was terrible. So I thought, how do I do this? Do I just say, here it is, this is what happened to our kid? Or do I write a letter to them and just say, here it is, this is what happened to Thomas? And I truly hope that all of their kids did have a great year, but my son was tortured.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So before you get to that point, because bullying, whether it's cyberbullying or physical bullying that Thomas went through, bullying is bullying where there is a victim. Sometimes the victim will tell their parents, sometimes they won't. So walk us through, what was it like for you when you started to notice that something was different?
So his group of friends, I had just started noticing there was a dance that had come up and there was a parent permission slip. And Thomas handed me the permission slip and I said, are your buddies going? And he said, oh, I don't know, Mom. And I'm like, do you want me to reach out to the moms and see if they're going? Because boys don't really communicate, right? So I reached out to the moms and I heard from one of them and she had said, oh, I don't think they're going. So I'm like, oh, okay, Thomas, I guess they're not going. So I'm like, do you still want to go by yourself? No, Mom, I don't want to go by myself. Okay. So the day that the permission slip was due, Thomas came home from school and said that at lunchtime, he watched his 2 quote-unquote friends take their signed permission slips out of their backpacks together and walk to the ASB office to turn in their permission slips. And I said, they never said anything to you? And he said, no. I said, did you say something to them? And he's like, well, I didn't know what to say. So I reached back out to the moms and said, hey, I didn't know that the boys were going, and we just found out today. And one of the moms said, oh, he can still turn in the permission slip today, trying to cover it up. And I said, no, it's already due. It's past the deadline now, so he can't go. And now he actually doesn't really want to go. Who would want to go if you're not included, right? And these are your friends, and if your friends don't want you there, then what are you supposed to do? So I started noticing things like that. And there was a day that they got out of school early, and I happened to be at the mall, and I saw that same group of boys with their whole crew, and my son was at home. So again, he wasn't included. And then I started asking him, who are you hanging out with at lunch? And he's like, I'm trying to hang out with them, but they're not wanting to hang out with me anymore. They started calling him names and making fun of him. And when that happens at any school, it spreads like wildfire, right? So we started contacting the school and asking them, hey, can you give us a little support here? Because we're not sure what's going on. And Is there someone Thomas can talk to about this? And oh, yeah, when there's an incident at school, then go ahead and make sure Thomas talks to an adult on campus. So when incidents would occur, he'd either be left out or be called names or he was threatened in the hallways. He did just that. He would go to the school officials, tell them what happened. Well, then they would bring those other boys in for investigating to find out what happened. And they did what most teenagers do, is lie. You know, no one's going to really tell the truth. So nothing would happen. Thomas would still feel uncomfortable at school. Then he started really having nobody to have lunch with, and they started teasing him and calling him names. The R word, which I don't like. They called him stupid. And he just kept telling me, like, I have no friends at school and everybody makes fun of me when I'm there, Mom. Yeah, and then he kept being teased. And then that last incident of he was literally choked on the playground at lunch. And it was the principal who pried her hands off of that sixth grader's neck. And I don't even know if anything happened to that kid. Like, parents aren't being called in anymore to have conferences with each other so that everyone knows what's going on. I'm not sure what their behavior consequences are, but it always just seemed that they were right back at school the next day anytime that happened. And then they were constantly retaliating against Thomas, right? Now Thomas has a target on his back, and there's nothing you can do about it.